This Geekster Media production starts now.
Welcome to So You Want to Be a Geek, the podcast where we dive into the vibrant and ever-evolving world of geek culture. Whether you're a seasoned fan or just curious about what makes being a geek so special, join us as we explore everything from comics to movies, gaming, tech, sports, and everything in between. Each episode will bring you insights, interviews, and the latest news to fuel your passion and expand your horizon. So grab your favorite fandom and let's embark on this geeky adventure together. I'm Michael Canetti, and this is So You Want to Be a Geek. The views, ideas, and statements discussed on this episode of So You Want to Be a Geek are only meant for conversation purposes. This episode is not intended to provide investment or legal advice. If you're interested in investing in cryptocurrency, always do your own research. And now, let's get geeky. So how do you think the regulations on Bitcoin and these other different cryptocurrencies are shaping the world, and are they going to evolve and become more regulated and more strict? Is it going to be harder for people to invest, or is it going to be is the world not going to let it get that kind of regulated?
It's a great question, Mike. For me, for what I do for a living in the financial crime prevention, anti-money laundering, and sanctions and other protocols that financial institutions try and do their best to prevent illicit funds from getting into the hands of terrorist organizations and other criminals. That is a bipartisan issue. That everybody agrees that it has to be there. But at the same time, what I think the examiners are recognizing, and I think that this new administration is recognizing, so there was a new, what we call an NPRM, which is basically a proposal for regulation back in June that came from the Financial Regulatory Authority, FINRA. They said that they want to take a risk-based approach with financial institutions as a whole, which include the crypto exchanges, etc. And so, meaning, in the old days, over the last 20 years, everybody's always taken the approach that you must comply with every single aspect of the Patriot Act, which is the Bank Secrecy Act, the BSA AML protocols. You must comply with every single one of them, and if you don't comply with them, then you're out of compliance, and now you're in a lot of trouble. Now they're taking a more risk-based approach. They're being reasonable about it because the cost of compliance is in the billions. I remember a cost savings exercise at one of the major institutions. They saved something like $1.9 billion by moving all their folks from New York down to Delaware and down into Florida and into Arizona. They shut down a lot of real estate. They saved $1.9 billion, I think it was in 2019. They spent $3.2 billion on compliance.
Wow.
And that is the approach for the examiners, but now they're being a little bit more, I don't want to say they're not being, they've always been reasonable. They always want to try it. They're always trying to do what they can in order to prevent it. But there's also, when you look at the new administration coming in, they want to balance regulation with progress. A lot of these AI, crypto, fintech, technology startups, they're running on shoestrings, they're living on the margins, including myself, my Bitcoin mining operation. We run on the margins through right now. Hopefully prices go up, things get a little bit better for us. But the higher the cost of compliance, you're now limiting the amount of funds that can go to research and development, that can go into scalability, that can go into growth. And so that's when that's where I think this new administration is going to go. They're going to balance the regulation. There's going to be regulation, but not so much that it's going to put a stranglehold on progress.
Okay, that's cool.
I think that is my own belief. That's where it all are going. And absolutely. And I think that is and the examiners are now taking that approach. And I think that's where the industry, from financial service, and not even just crypto and startups, but financial services as a whole, they're being much more reasonable about it from a regulatory perspective.
That's cool. One of the things that people, because like I said, Bitcoin is the most common, most familiar. Like, how is Bitcoin so much more unique than all the other currencies? And on top of that, like, when you have banks that deal with dollars and cents, right? How does that sort of say, listen, this currency that I can access on my phone and I can use to have wired money, like, how does that, in the grander scheme of things, help people evolve and also manage their currencies that way?
Sure. So I think that maybe the best way of looking at And I think you touched on this earlier, which was the idea of what's the difference between Bitcoin and everything else?
There's Ethereum and Dogecoin and yada yada yada, whatever.
Absolutely, and I think you have to look at it in a couple of different ways. The first one is that I'm reminded of it's a weird parallel, but I'm going to draw it. The majority of my family are contractors; they're in the trades. And
I make podcasts. Right there was a construction.
I do spreadsheets and PowerPoints. And my cousin, he's in the elevators union. He designed and installed the elevators in 1 Manhattan West, where I go to work every day. So I ride the elevators that my cousin installed.
That's cool.
In one of the tallest buildings and one of the newest buildings, and it's incredible the work that these guys do. But the thing they always tell me is this, and I think this is pretty universal. You could either do something well, you could do something fast, or you could do something cheap, and you can only have two of those.
Right.
So if you want it to be done well, and you want it to be fast, it's not going to be cheap.
Right.
If you want it to be cheap, then and you want it to be done fast, it's not going to be done well.
Right.
So that's actually the way that a lot of these blockchain protocols are going to break down. So for example, Bitcoin prioritizes being done well, and what I mean by done well is being secure.
Right.
So in the crypto world, I'll just change out some of the nomenclature. You can only have two of these three things. You can be secure, you can be fast in terms of your processing speeds, or you can be cheap in terms of your transaction fees. So for example, Bitcoin, and by the way, the idea of being cheap in the blockchain world, cheap is unbelievably cheap relative to the fees that you'll experience in traditional finance, because there's very little overhead when it comes to this stuff. So they're able to send tens of thousands of dollars in transactions for pennies. Wow. So that's what I mean by cheap. But in the blockchain world, you could send them with pennies, or you could send something for 1/100th of a penny. And we'll touch on that in a minute. And so when you're in the blockchain world, Bitcoin prioritizes security and price, right? So they've never been hacked. They've never been hacked. They have an incredibly secure network. They are cheap, but they are not fast. Right. Just for context, the Bitcoin processes transactions. They produce 7 transactions per second. Solana, which is another cryptocurrency network, they process 65,000 transactions per second. 65,000. And then to even go down from there, I think Visa processes 24,000 transactions a second. MasterCard, I think, does 8,000 transactions per second. So Solana blows them all out of the water. In terms of transaction speed and price, they're also extremely cheap when it comes to transaction price.
But it's not very secure.
But they're secure, but they've had a couple of hacks over the last 2 years, which of course they've fixed. They've gotten better with their security, but that's what I mean. Like when over the history, you'll see 1, 2, 3 maybe hacks. I'm not saying all right. Happens to a lot of these blockchains, because they want to be faster, they want to be better, they want to try and beat Ethereum. Bitcoin is over here.
Right.
It is an asset as declared by the U.S. government. It is secure. You'll never have more than 21 million coins ever produced, so it is a deflationary asset promoted by not only the cap on the coins, but also by the halving that occurs every single 4 years. So what the halving is that every 4 years built into the network, the revenue generated that is given to miners as a compensation for our efforts goes down by half, which we can go into those challenges a little bit later. But the point of the halving is to make Bitcoin a deflationary asset. So, for example, as I mentioned before, the ETFs, right? They're soaking up 4 times the amount of Bitcoin produced per day by miners. So, if the demand continues to increase and the supply continues to decrease, what happens naturally? The price of the simple supply-demand economics. But that's why it goes up so much. That is why you get these huge spikes, is because not only are people seeing the use case value of Bitcoin as a deflationary asset, as a digital gold, as a storage of value, whatever you want to call it. And not only is it then legitimized by the security generated by governments around the world, but then, so that's Bitcoin. That is an asset.
Right.
Of course, there is always now this debate between asset and security. How do you define that? That is one of the major regulations that actually President Trump signed yesterday. He signed two. He signed two executive orders yesterday when he was speaking to the World Economic Forum. The first one was, I believe, it was about the energy. It was about AI and crypto and making that a priority. But number two, the first one he signed was that there needs to be a clear regulatory framework for cryptocurrencies in the United States. Period. The end. Because right now it's very ambiguous. So what a lot of cryptocurrency firms are trying to do, they comply with BSA AML, KYC protocols. They want to make sure that they know who their customers are, where are they living, where are they getting their money from. They want to just make sure that who they're doing business with is legitimate. So all right. So now when you're talking about Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, Tezos, Hedera Hashgraph, also known as HBAR. These are all layer 1 blockchain solutions that allow programmers to develop applications on top of them. Those are examples of blockchain technology that are going to be faster. They're going to be cheaper. They're going to be more dynamic.
Are they more volatile than them?
They are more volatile than Bitcoin. It's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you look at the markets today, I think it went up somewhere like 1.5%. You'll see Solana going up 3% or 4.5%. You'll see Ethereum going up 3-4%. It's usually a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio, something like that.
Okay.
So that's in terms of value and volatility, but at the same time, Solana can mint new coins. They can burn new coins. They can mint them. The volume fluctuates.
Okay. There's no set cap.
There's no set cap. Ethereum, that's the exact same thing. Cardano, the exact same thing. They can burn. They can mint. They can do whatever they want with the volumes. But what's unique about them is that they each have their own programmer friendly that allows applications to be built on top of them. So Solana actually has a store in Manhattan that they created their own phone a couple of years ago. You can't get them now for less than a couple grand, I believe it is. Like they first offered them for, I think it was $300, $400, $500. The exchange that went under with Sam Bankman-Fried, who's never going to see the light of day again, if memory serves me right. Ever since his Bernie Madoff 2.0 fraud case, which FTX was a major investor in Solana, and a lot of people thought that it was going to go under, including me, which is the only reason why I didn't buy it at $16 18 months ago, and right now it's sitting at $240. Which is comparable to where it was a few years ago. So, but that's the volatility of crypto, because you don't know more often than not, I'm not saying always, but more often than not, you don't know who the underlying owners of these things are. So, for example,
who's pulling the strings, so to speak?
Who's pulling the strings? Who's running it? How much is minted? Which is why I urge all listeners to read the white papers. Try and find a YouTube channel to figure out what exactly these guys are doing. Look at the market capitalization. So every coin will have its own number of coins that it'll ever produce. So I think, for example, Dogecoin, for round number's sake, let's just say they only produce 100 million ever. There is another one called Shiba Inu, where it's another meme coin. That's the way I think you could really bucket these things. There's Bitcoin, the asset. There's assets. There's application-based blockchains. There's meme coins, and then there's specialized use cases. So we're going to sort of go down the line here. So, and I can do it pretty quickly.
I should have got a Suburban before this.
I know you're a big Manhattan guy now. Don't think that I didn't think of trying to bring over a gift set of some kind. So you got Bitcoin. You've got these fast, cheap, application-based blockchains. I'll say right now, my favorite right now is Hedera Hashgraph.
I've heard of Hedera.
HBAR is the acronym it goes under. What a fantastic protocol. Just a couple of key statistics.
Sure.
So it's got a unique consensus algorithm for validating transactions on the network that is unlike any other of the other protocols that are out there. It's never been hacked. The transaction fees are not dollars. They are, right now, the transaction fees are capped a 1,000th of a penny. So 0.001 transaction fee. They process 10,000 transactions per second. They validate in 3 to 5 seconds. The governance, so the people that are running the show and making sure that they are always secure and making sure that it is an investment grade protocol. It's Google, LG, Boeing, and IBM. So those are the players that are supporting this protocol. It is the most energy efficient network ever, sitting with 3 million kilowatt hours, 3 millionths
Wow.
of kilowatts per hour that is used per transaction. And just for comparison, Bitcoin per transaction, 1,736 kilowatt hours per transaction. So it is an unbelievably fast, cheap, secure, an enterprise-grade protocol.
So it's a unicorn, essentially?
So much so that HBAR has been selected by SpaceX to be applied to their satellites as a case study to figure out whether or not they can actually send crypto into space.
Could you imagine in 10 years' time we'll be sending money to Mars?
In seconds.
In seconds.
In seconds.
But what I'm hearing here, though, is like you as the business owner that's also managing people's investments in this stuff.
Yes.
You have to understand the financial side of it, but also the technology side of it too. You have to be able to be an expert on both those things, because if a customer or a client comes to you and is like, hey, where is my money going and how is this working? You need to be able to explain to them, this is how it's working, and understanding both those things, which is not an easy thing to understand both. Like I know a hell of a lot about technology. My wife does all the finances. So it's just because it's just never been. I have an art brain. That's what I do, and I find that very fascinating. That like you are so fascinated by this that you've taken the time to just understand the whole world. It's not just like the money side of it, but the technology side of it and the energy efficient side of it. All of this stuff is so cool. It's crazy. I mean, if you haven't sold yourself to be a good company people bet, please call my friend to help you out. He knows what he's doing here.
It's just some context around that. Like how I even got into it was, I think we can all agree that I've seen over the years how I've always wanted to make sure that my family's secure. I've got 2 young children. I've got a wife. I've got a mortgage to pay, and the corporate world is first of all, I gotta say, this was during the time when I was at a different firm. I love my firm. Accenture has a culture unlike, and this is not even a plug for them. This is just genuinely my feeling on it, and it's how I got started. But it was like, you just look around you and you just see how the corporate machine can sometimes be very, very unforgiving, and you can do everything right, and you will, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. And the idea that I wouldn't be able to provide for my kids in some form or fashion, it made me quite nervous. And so like about 3-4 years ago, I started looking into franchises and even investing in real estate, that whole thing. And I just kept going down this line. And the thing that I kept running into is that I either had too much competition or I had to generate a client base. And so depending on people, or I had to depend on employees, or there was a lot of overhead, or this and that. And then when I stumbled on a YouTube video about Bitcoin mining, swear to God, YouTube has done this to me.
YouTube has done this to me too. So.
YouTube has done this for us all in a good way, but all in a really good way. It's interesting. I was listening to something, and they're like, nobody knows what YouTube is, because at the end of the day, it's a medium from information that is so different. Sorry to get philosophical here.
No. I'll tell you a stupid story if you would, but go ahead.
Yeah, I have ADHD. I have a really tough time digesting information when I'm reading it. I have a really tough time. So all these hundreds of hours of listening to podcasts and YouTube, it just helps my brain visualize and digest. Oh, so in other words, and I'm an operations guy. So that's what I do every single day. I am the North America lead for financial crime prevention. I have an operational brain. I can see how things line up, and I can see where the efficiencies are. And so that's how I even sort of was willing to go down this road, because it is operational in nature. You buy a computer, they produce X, they cost Y, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's just simple. It's just a simple business plan. But to your point about now protecting my customers, there are really no customers, but I do have investors, and it's very grassroots. It's family, friends, a couple of former colleagues, people who I genuinely care about. So not only am I trying to protect people that I care about, but now people who have believed in me, right, that I've known my entire life. I see them at Thanksgiving. So I want to make sure that
How my money do?
Right. I got a phone call earlier today. And where's the website? The Happy New Year email was fantastic. Those kinds of things. But the business side, that's where the MBA came into play. I learned a lot about the finance side. What is the finance, the taxes? 16 years of consulting really helped with the ability to sort of really figure out having the realization of knowing what you don't know, and then going down that road to figure it out. So not only have I figured out these efficiency plans, but also it's designing quarterly statements. It is designing all the reporting, all of the financials, the taxes, the making sure that I'm KYC compliant, doing all the things that I tell my clients to do.
Right.
It's a new field, and it's a new business, and trying to stand that all up to make sure that everything is secure is difficult, but it is quite worth it, and I'm willing to go down that road.
And to you, at least from what I'm hearing, it sounds very rewarding for you.
It is rewarding. It is, and it's worth it. The idea that and listen, it might work out, it might not, but at the end of the day,
if you didn't do it, you would regret not doing it too. It sounds like.
I think that's really, again, I hate to get philosophical, but you got to take your shot every once in a while. Yeah. I'm in financial crime compliance. I am a highly risk-averse person. But every single time I kept going down the road and I started creating the numbers and the process and just writing it all down and then seeing where the regulatory space and the governmental space and the government support and the not only traction in the US, but the traction around the globe and the use cases around the globe and being a part of these industry discussions. I'm very lucky to have been at these firms like Deloitte, Ernst & Young, and now at Accenture. I'm exposed to a lot of these financial services, so I'm able to just hear where trends are going in terms, and the interest. People were never really disclosing any business plans or anything like that, but you're able to see the interest of people and where people were researching. And I'm like, if this is not an opportunity to be a part of this burgeoning field. And by the way, it is so early.
Yeah, it is very.
It is so early, and people will always say, "Oh, well, I got in 2017." Did you hold on to it? You didn't,
right?
Because it went up from 400 to 1,400, and then when it got to 10,000, you couldn't get back in because you got priced out, or you lost your My brother-in-law went to MIT. He told me stories about friends that were buying Bitcoin on Silk Road and then buying pizzas and mattresses and other things that go along with it. They were always what college kids do, and they were, but 10, 15, 50, right. Because that's the use case at the time.
Yeah.
And now the use cases are legitimized. Even in 2017, I was speaking with a lot of folks in 2017, but there were no on-ramps and off-ramps for your finances that were secure. There was no Coinbase back then. The way that you got Bitcoin back in the day was you sent $500 to China or Japan or wherever. They sent you a hard drive, or a thumb drive or something, and that's how you got the Bitcoin. That's how you had your Bitcoin. You sent money through the mail, essentially.
Yes.
You sent money through the mail blindly to China, and they sent you back a hard drive with some code.
Like, you think countries are going to get rid of their currency and go to
No. There are, what I will say is, so not only has the U.S., so how does it impact the broader global economy? I think it impacts it in a couple of ways. So I already touched on the fact that I think Bitcoin mining and using the sustainable energy and all the renewables and all those investments are going to create thousands of jobs, not even just in startups.
Plus, it's creating new ways of innovation.
It's new innovation. It is, but think about all the infrastructure that has to go along with that.
Right.
It is for you to power a small Bitcoin mining farm, you need transformers, you need generators, you need infrastructure, you need
cooling systems, and
you need cooling, you need HVAC, you need to have my host has 3 different forms of internet.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Because if one goes down, because they've got to promise that they're promising 95% uptime, 100% uptime. They're doing their absolute best. Yeah. But a lot of these firms, they also work with local governments. They work with the local grids. They do draw a lot of power, even though it is sustainable energy. But they want to make sure, I think over the last 5 or 6 days, my miners have been down 5 of those days, 5 of the last 6 days, because it's so cold in Indiana. And the last thing that you want to do is say, well, you can't use your heater because the miners are using the energy. So there's a give and take, and there is a community that is being formed, or rather a relationship that a lot of these miners are forming with local governments to make sure that there is no impact to the broader citizenship of the states, of the cities that they give in. But when they do establish these hosting facilities, they are in more remote areas. So, but they need to have maintenance crews. So they're hiring people there. The infrastructure, there's going to be jobs there. The idea of replacing currencies, I don't know if they'll ever completely replace currencies, because of course governments want to make sure that they are, at the end of the day, they have control over the currency of their citizens, and that is completely fair. But at the same time, a lot of the citizens of these countries, for example Nigeria, they have a huge Bitcoin infrastructure going on there right now. The inflation there is quite high. So a lot of folks, they convert their local currency into Bitcoin. They transact in Bitcoin. Peer-to-peer currency transactions have gone up rather significantly in that region. So as opposed to transacting the local currency, they're transacting in Bitcoin. So that way they don't have to sell their Bitcoin. They don't have to get out of the ecosystem. So their money continues to gain value while they use the money. So that's really great. I think they've already created jobs in private industry and now in public. And so I think that it is a tremendous opportunity here. But
this is a stupid question because it is a peer-to-peer currency. Like, can somebody link a Bitcoin account to their Venmo and like send it through that, or they had to do it through Coinbase kind of an app? How does that work?
I think I do believe I know PayPal has
PayPal owns Venmo now, so it's
PayPal does Bitcoin. I'm sorry, Venmo absolutely has a crypto option on the bottom right.
There you go.
Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash.
Holy moly!
So you can buy all of those things. So a lot of these and then of course you have the Stripe app, and you have all of these new fintechs. All of them have cryptocurrency integration. Not only can you send and receive peer-to-peer, but a lot of them have QR codes that allow you to then scan at POS at POS stations at your local retailers, at your coffee shop.
My wife's gonna go to Costco and spend $500 and stuff and pay for it in Bitcoin.
Well, if they accepted it,
That'd be hilarious.
Well, my local coffee shop in New Jersey. I worked on a project. I was based out of Jersey City, New Jersey. They had the most unbelievable coffee shop, and they had Block. They had Block as their POS system, and I was able to scan, and I was able to pay for my eggs and coffee every single morning. My ham and eggs, which go with Bitcoin.
It's a big Jersey thing right there. So, what advice would you have to someone who's interested in getting into the crypto space?
Absolutely. Take things slow. Whatever you do, don't just jump into a meme coin because it's going up 700%. So that's the first thing. Take things slow. Set up a Coinbase account. Establish find a reputable exchange like Coinbase. Set up your account. Connect it to your checking account, and start with $100. Start with $100. That's what I did. I started with $100 and start educating yourself. Figure out what these put those cryptocurrency networks in those buckets, like I broke them down. You got Bitcoin and Ethereum as an asset. Ethereum also straddles that line between asset and application based. But you've got the assets, you've got the application based cryptocurrencies. Then you have the meme coins, so the Doge coins, the Trump coins, the Shiba Inus, all those. Okay. Those are fine. Those are fun. They're fun. They're gonna go up and down. The AMC, it'll go up and down. Doge, however, I'll never forget in December 2019, I was talking about Bitcoin. I was talking, I got Ethereum, I got this, I got that, and my cousin goes, 16, 17 years old, says to me, I'll never forget it. I was standing right in my uncle's kitchen, and he goes, "What about Dogecoin, man?" And I go, "Oh, that's just a meme coin. It's sitting at a penny right now." It went up to like 60 something cents. It did a 60x. I mean, it screamed down. I mean, it went back down to 4 cents, but it went really. Was it 60? It might have been 30. Doesn't matter. It 30x. It did really, really well. But ask the youngins around you what the hot thing is. Figure out what they're doing, because always follow the young kids, which is kind of hurts my ego to say that out loud, isn't it?
No, trust. It's so funny. So something you said earlier, and it struck a chord to me, is about shooting your shot, right? So rewind 20 years ago, right? YouTube had just come out in 2005, right? And I was a year out of college, working at Apple, and just being a putsy early 20s, right?
Yep.
I was making carpool karaoke videos, just singing in my car and doing dumb stuff like that, filming it on, I don't even know what I was filming it on, probably on like my Motorola Razr, for God's sakes, who knows? And somebody said to me in like 2006, 2007, they're like, you should really take those things down. You'll never get a job and make any money if anybody finds those things. Fast forward a decade or two later, people are making millions singing in their friggin' showers, and I'm like, all right. And I got into this podcasting thing because about 7 years ago, I got really burned out just doing the regular 9 to 5 thing, right? And I set myself some goals in my life. I said, okay, I wanted to get into doing podcasting. I got on a different show a couple times, and one of the guys there, he and I started our own thing. I really loved it. I love this interview, talky kind of thing, right? Sure. And then I said, okay, I set myself some goals. Okay, I wanted to do this. I want to get a second master's. I wanted to produce feature film. I wanted to do this podcast. I wanted to yada, yada, yada. And I set myself a 5-year plan. And if I hit all 5 of those goals, I could start a new 5-year plan, and so on and so forth. Because I got tired of just doing the clocking in, clocking out, worry about living paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. Listen, podcasting is not lucrative, but I love doing it, and it's fun. And I just love the idea of bringing communities together and letting people feel like, okay, I can get into this world, whatever it might be. And that, to me, is fun. And I look at you, and we've known each other for a year now, and I learned so much more about you in an hour than I have. And I find that so crazy. But like, you found something that you were passionate with, and you just said, I'm going to take everything I got and put my brain, my heart, and put it into it and learn this thing. And that's really, really admirable that you like did that and are doing this thing now and are trying to not just build a better life for you and your family, but other people's families as well by growing this business and everything, which is kudos to you. I give you a lot of props for that.
I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a lot of late nights, a lot of sleepless nights, because I started it in, like, I hit send on the payment in April 2022, and I think in May, there's all of a sudden there's tanks on the television and the Ukraine war, and everything just went screaming down by 60-70%, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And you just sort of figure it out. Oh, Matt, your rates are too high. Renegotiate the contract. Well, how are you going to renegotiate? Well, maybe sign an extra year that they're starting up too. So maybe if you give them more time, they'll give you less. They'll give you less, and it worked. So I went from 12 cents to then 10 cents, and then I'm like, okay, well, our contract is ending. Hey, and I've this relationship over here. I got it down to 9, and now I've added more miners, so now I can get it down to 8. So now you're living on the margins, and then in terms of scale, so then you realize, well, there's also something called, so not only are you trying to invest in money in these miners that will die in 5 to 7 years, right? Like any other
Computers to be replaced. Yeah.
Computers are computers at the end of the day, and these run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week
At super high processing speeds.
Super high processing speeds, and they are remarkably expensive to replace. And the prices vary. So like when Bitcoin was really down, I was DCAing, dollar cost averaging in all along the way the last couple of years. But what I was realizing was that, listen, again, I got kids, I got family, I got a house. I am now getting my MBA. I got student loans to pay for. I have only X amount of cash flow I got going here. Yeah. So, well, what are we going to do here? Are we just going to give up? No. I did a couple of reinvestments. I I developed marketing materials and sales materials based on the advices of my professors. I was at during my time at the Kelley School of Business in Indiana, which I've been doing it all online. It was one of the best decisions of my life, just to help give me that structure and that push and take lessons along the way, the whole way. So now I created this marketing materials. I created an investor prospectus for the first time in my life to try and prove this is the competitive advantage. This is the projections. This is that. I brought on friends, family, a couple of former colleagues. We're all working. They invested with me. I've gone from 12 miners to now 60.
Wow.
I have, we've now built this thing, and we are still, and so, but the problem is, of course, there's always more competition as the price goes up. There's always competition. And so scaling on my own, you've got to realize, one of the biggest lessons learned was I couldn't do it on my own anymore. There was a point where I finally realized I can't do this on my own. You've gone as far as you can go. You need to ask for help. You have to give something up so that way your investment, the money that you have moved away from your family, moved out of your family's funds, you're now taking a chance on a business. Listen, I could have opened up a deli and lost all this money. I could have opened up any number of different things, and the real estate market in a city in middle America could have plunged, and I could have lost all the money that way. There's always a chance of losing, but you got to take the shot. But you also have to realize when you've gone as far as you can by yourself.
Like you said before, you got to be okay with knowing what you don't know.
Yes.
And then be willing to ask for help for those that might be able to look at it in another perspective and bring it the way it needs to go. If you can't do it all yourself, listen, I tell this to my students all the time. Like, you can't be a one-person army. Like, exactly. It's impossible. It's you'll burn yourself out. You'll make a mistake. Things will happen, and no one is Superman, and no one is going to be able to do everything under the sun. Dude, I gotta say, I was super excited to do this. I am even more excited now because it's like I feel amped up. Like it was such a fantastic conversation. I want to thank you so much for doing this and coming out and even just posing like, hey, you want to do an episode about crypto? It's like, hell yeah, let's do it. So now, thank you so much for joining me and being on this podcast. It was amazing.
It is honestly a dream come true to be on a podcast and to be with a friend and to talk about something that I love so much and to put it out there. I'm really, really excited about it, but it's just the beginning. Like I mentioned before, it is just the beginning.
Someday when you're like hosting a conference, I want you to be like, yo, I got a ticket for you in the back. I want you to be like, I knew him. I know him.
Well, I'll make sure you get that ticket.
Please do. I would love that.
And let's do another podcast. Let's do another episode when things really get cooking because things are about to take off.
I mean, like, we've only talked for a little over an hour and a half, right? But like, we've just scratched the surface.
It's honestly scratching the surface. You stole the words out of my mouth. Like, there are not only blockchains out there that are assets, that do applications, that are memes. There are blockchains out there that have really interesting use cases. Like, there's one called VeChain that focuses on supply chain. So you're able to put a barcode on the back of a carton of milk and see exactly what cow and from what farm on what day, what time did that milk come from, in order to really show the quality of the product. Wow. That's what people are using this blockchain for. They put a little barcode on the back. You could scan it, and you could see, using the blockchain history, you could see what cow at what time on what farm did that milk come from. Wow. Like, it is unbelievable. Then there's Tezos, which is using Tezos, big blue sign in the middle of right field at City Field for the New York Mets. They are them and Cardano, which is a Wyoming-based blockchain led by Charles Hoskinson. They are coming up with a voting system and an irrefutable voting system, so that way there's no questions about
if the election was stolen,
if the election was stolen. So they're coming up with that. Then there's one called SolveCare that is doing healthcare data sharing. So that way hospitals can share patient data seamlessly.
In 2025, like, why if I go to Catholic Health, I can't say that to Northwell?
Right, exactly. Well, that's exactly what all these networks and all of these unbelievable use cases, we are just getting started.
Dude, well, again, thank you so much for being on this podcast. Guys, I hope you got as much out of this as I did. This was incredible. You can always follow us on our social medias. It's SYBTBAG at Instagram and TikTok. And TikTok is still here, guys. And follow our YouTube channel, our Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. You can also go to our TeePublic store and get some nice merch if you want some shirts. We love selling merch. I got cool new logos going up. I've even been working on some little catchphrase shirts I'm hoping to put out soon.
Just a little plug for us. It is syntiromining.com, SYNTIRO mining, MINING.com.
I love the eyebrow raise. So until next time, everybody, stay geeky. Bye for now. Thank you again so much. thanks for tuning into this episode of So You Want to Be a Geek. We would like to thank the Geekster Media Network. I'm Michael Canetti. I'm your host, producer, and editor. We hope you enjoyed the journey into geekdom as much as we did. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Swipbag for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more geeky goodness. Have a topic you'd like us to discuss or a guest you'd like to hear from? Let us know. So you want to be a geek at gmail.com and stay up to date and join the conversation. Until next time, keep embracing that inner geek, and remember, the adventure never ends.
This has been a Geekster Media production.
This episode of So You Want to Be a Geek is brought to you by Comics Capsules. These are a great product for protecting your comics. They are UV resistant, crystal clear, they are stackable, they fit in your regular long and short boxes. They fully encapsulate your comics with a flip top hinge that allows you to access your comics anytime you want. They'll even fit with the bag and board in the sleeve. It is really, really cool. They have this great little eye hook. I have some hanging up back there. I have some over there on display. Because sometimes you just want to display your cool comics without having to send them out to CGC and waiting and spending a fortune on getting them graded. This stuff works great. I really, really love them. You can even have like a dedicated label inside of them. They're super awesome. So our sponsor for this episode of So You Want to Be a Geek is Comics Capsule. Do you like hot sauce? I know I do. Well, one of our sponsors for this week's episode is Jablo Hot Sauce. They are a family-owned, locally produced, amazing Filipino hot sauce that was recently featured on Hot Ones. You're gonna love it. You can put it on everything from hummus to meats to vegetables, whatever you think of. They are a great company, family-owned, and locally produced Filipino hot sauce. If you want to find out where the punch is, check out Jablo Hot Sauce.